Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Thursday, February 10th. Wow, I got a lot to say about what happened today, but first, I just want to say that I think today marks the day when we have seen investors and the market go into extreme psychosis. This is mental illness to the extreme. And it is a psychosis over monetary policy, the Fed, interest rates. Now, a lot of things happened today, but first, because I don't want to forget mentioning this, right at the end of the day, there was a news report about the possibility tomorrow of an emergency rate hike. I mean, the statement alone is ludicrous. It is insane. When is it ever an emergency to raise interest rates? That is my question. An emergency rate hike, by the way, if that happens tomorrow, it is absolutely ironclad evidence that the Fed has told the people who are running the Fed, not the institution itself, but those running the Fed, have completely lost their minds. They're incapable, all right? They're incompetent, and they have no clue what they're doing. Now, I just wanted to mention the emergency rate hike. And by the way, if that does happen, I would be a big buyer of gold and a seller of the US dollar. Because the rate hikes, folks, they're not going to squash inflation. If rate hikes work to squash inflation, we'd see countries like Turkey and Venezuela and Argentina and Ukraine, places with super high interest rates, even Russia, they wouldn't have an inflation problem if rate hikes were the remedy to squashing inflation. All right? Now you would think, I don't want to go all through this again because I say it every damn time, but you would think these idiots would re-examine their thesis when the exact opposite happens. And by the way, on the flip side of that, you would think Japan with negative interest rates, or the Eurozone, they would have super high inflation because of negative rates. Well, recently the Eurozone rates turned positive. Anyway, now that I got that out of the way, the emergency rate hike, that is a completely ludicrous, ridiculous statement. An emergency rate hike. It's going to do nothing, first of all, and there's no condition that exists that needs an emergency rate hike. But now let's talk about what happened today. Okay, first you had the hot CPI print. It came in at 0.6%. Okay, and I knew, as a matter of fact, I sent out an email, I think it was yesterday, advising or talking to my subscribers saying, look, if the thing comes in hot, you're going to get a market reaction down, but buy that reaction down. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, the CPI came in hot, 0.6%. We had the market sell off, and then I bought into that dip, and then we started to rally, and we got all the way back to almost unchanged, and then it started to fade off a little bit, and then you had Bullard, who he's like this, I think he's St. Louis Fed president. Is it Jim Bullard, I think? And he came out and he said, okay, I see, the funds rate at 1% by July. And then boom, they started, you see all this again, this is headline trading. This is people reacting. This is this psychosis and this mental illness. You got to understand, folks, that it's been going on for 40, 50 years. This belief in central banking as the regulatory mechanism of the economy. All right. Fiscal, nobody talks about fiscal except me. All right. And I'm going to get to that in a little while. But I mean, we've seen the effect of monetary policy over the last 40 or 50 years. It's been absolutely ineffective in managing the economy. Absolutely ineffective, and if anything, you could even say it's been a source of income and wealth inequality like in a huge, gigantic way, in an enormous way. But I won't even get into that discussion. Let's just say it's completely ineffective in managing demand or pricing or employment. So it's just been a farce. It's been a scam from the get-go. And even its founder, Milton Friedman, at the end of his life, he didn't even believe in the things that he, postulated or spoke about or put into action, at least academically, at the beginning of his career. And it's become a mental illness. I've been in this business over 40 years, okay? I've been a member of 4 different exchanges, managed money for a hedge fund, worked at a major international bank as a proprietary money manager. Look, I have never seen an environment like this, a psychology like this, that has become so mindlessly focused on monetary policy and central banking and interest rates. I mean, now it has reached a point where, like I said, it's a psychosis. It's a mental illness. If you read anything about the financial industry, about the markets, the top story everywhere and the story that will permeate all day long on every single, whatever it is, a blog, a TV program, a YouTube, it's going to be about the Fed, it's going to be about central banks, it's going to be about interest rates, it's going to be about monetary policy. Are they doing QE? Are they doing QT? Are they raising rates? Are they I mean, nothing else matters to people now. Nothing else matters. It is a mental illness. Okay? So, we had the hot CPI print. And again, they're not gonna cure inflation with higher interest rates. The cost of credit is reflected in the cost of all goods and services. You raise rates, you raise the general price level. Those higher costs are going to be passed along. I mean, you see this very clearly in all the aforementioned examples I gave, like Turkey. Why is it, why is inflation still high? They keep raising the interest rate. Venezuela, Argentina, and vice versa with Japan. Why? They're sitting around, well, why can't we get inflation up? You got negative interest rates for the last, how many years? 8, 10 years. And then this ridiculous, crazy, and emergency rate. So what are they going to do? They're going to put through a 50 basis point rate hike tomorrow? Meanwhile, listen, and we're talking about a 2% 10-year. 2%. When I bought my house in 1985, my mortgage rate was 11.75%. 11.75%. I had no trouble buying a house. I had no trouble paying my mortgage. That's what rates were back then, and we're talking. Everybody is freaking out. Everybody's going fucking crazy because we're talking about, what, a 3 or 4% mortgage rate? A 2% 10-year? And this is this is classic psychosis. This is mental illness taken to an extreme. Maybe there's a word better than psychosis. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, but I know what psychosis is. Maybe there's there's a term that defines a mental state even more extreme in its disorder than psychosis. If there is, let me know. And by the way, we've never been in a situation like this where the Fed is going to start raising rates and you have record amount of fiscal. Let's talk about the fiscal for a second because February is looking freaking awesome. I mean, right now, the 10-day average of daily flows is 29.4 billion. That's a 590 billion monthly flow rate. And next week, we're going to get a quarterly interest payment of about 44 billion. So we're going to end up February easy over 600 billion. You got to go all the way back to last June or July to see a 600 billion month. I mean, we haven't seen a 600 billion month since like last June. And as far as I can recall, that was really bullish. Like things were really, really bullish. The market was going straight up. We haven't seen that since last June. We're having that happen right now in February. And everybody is, everyone's looking over here at the rate. But this is, again, this is a psychosis. This is a mental illness. I can't help it if I keep repeating that, because it's very, very important that you understand this. I mean, if you want to understand it. The other thing is this, like inflation, there's going to be losers and there's going to be winners. All right? Inflation is bad for debtors. Inflation is good for savers. Just like deflation, there's going to be winners and there's going to be losers in a deflationary situation. All this is, inflation or deflation, is a redistribution of income. But that happens all the time. That happens with tax policy. That happens with trade policy. I mean, nobody gets all crazy about those things. They happen all the time. Inflation, it's not like, I've said this before, the income, the savings, they don't fly out into outer space. What is something that flies out into outer space, or a black hole? What goes into a black hole is when the government runs a surplus. That is taking away all those things. I was worried about that in January. Remember when they ran the surplus? I mean, the surplus literally is, you're taking that stuff away. You're sucking it out into a black hole. You're not with inflation. It's shuffling things around. Now, if you understand that, you can make money on that understanding, but that's up to you. Or you could sit around, they're going to raise the interest rate to 2%. I'm scared. Everything going to collapse. I'm scared. I paid 11.75% for my mortgage. I don't know, folks. It's a psychosis. It's crazy what's going on. Absolute insanity. Absolute insanity. And it's a terrible, I feel it's a terrible abrogation of the responsibility of our elected officials. I mean, we put them there in Washington, as our representatives, okay? For the common good. We the people of the United States, right? And in the preamble, provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare for ourselves and our posterity. They're not doing that. They gave it all up. They washed their hands of it and said, let's put all this on a bank, the Fed. Folks, if banks were the answer, we'd be living in some kind of utopia, because we got thousands and thousands of banks in this country. If banks were the answer, none of us would have any problems. Our representatives just like, okay, here, you take it. We're not going to do anything. Build back better. No, we can't do that. Meanwhile, the roads are crumbling, the bridges are crumbling, all our infrastructure's falling apart. I went to freaking Turkey. The airport over there was like unfreaking believable compared to the crap we got over here. So that's where we're at on this, folks. It's a mental illness. I'm buying this dip. We're going to have an over 600 billion. By the way, the deficit so far for this month, February, 120 billion. So we flipped like big time from last month's January's surplus of 20 billion. We're now a deficit of 120 billion. That is a net transfer of 120 billion to us, the economy. And everybody, I'm scared. The Fed is going to raise interest rate. I'm scared. By the way, there's one other thing about rate hikes. They are fiscal expansions, because the government necessarily now will have to pay more on its debt, and that is a fiscal injection into the economy. I mean, if you understand these things, again, it's the difference between being psychotic or having understanding and rationality. It's your choice. Anyway, that's my comment for today. Crazy day, and I'm not scared, but I mean, it's psychosis, folks. That's what it is. Bye.